Welcome to the first Continuity Insights podcast. My name is Luke Simpson, and I'm the editor of Continuity Insights magazine. This podcast series will run each month, appearing first in our monthly digital magazine and later on our website. We are also working on a subscription service using iTunes that we hope to have available in the coming months. Each month I will be joined by one or more members of our editorial advisory board to answer your questions about critical issues in business continuity, disaster recovery, emergency management, risk management, and all of the associated fields. I'll post details of the upcoming podcasts on our LinkedIn group called Continuity Insights, and also in our weekly newsletter, the CI Bulletin. You can sign up for the CI Bulletin at continuityinsights.com/subscribe. We've decided to kick off the series with a discussion on the soon-to-be-released ISO 22301 standard, Societal Security, Business Continuity Management Systems Requirements. Since posting this topic to the Continuity Insights LinkedIn group, we've received a stream of questions and concerns, much of which relates to the standard's compatibility with current standards like BS 25999 and programs such as PS Prep. Here to answer these questions is Brian Zawada, a Continuity Insights editorial advisory board member, director of consulting services at Evolution Consulting, and member of the U.S. Technical Advisory Group to ISO Technical Committee 223. Brian participated in the June 2011 Berlin meeting as a member of Working Group 4, the team charged with developing ISO 22301. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Thanks, Luke.
Let's start by looking at the title of ISO 22301, Societal Security Business Continuity Management Systems Requirements. This gives us a few clues about the content and goals of the proposed standards. How does security come into the mix here, and what is the overall goal of the proposed standard?
Well, Luke, I think your question really stems from the word security in the title, and to many people it's a bit confusing. But the term societal security is a word combination that in the United States sometimes triggers images of guns and guards. But in reality, security in the context of the work that ISO is doing today, it's really all about protection, where management and the people charged with implementing the business continuity management system are protecting against disruption by working to not only minimize the impact associated with downtime, but also minimize the likelihood of disruption in the first place. And all of that should be consistent with organizational strategy and management-approved objectives. Now, having said all that, security is in fact a control to affect impact and likelihood of downtime. So although 22301 does not prescribe controls for physical or IT security, what we think of as traditional security, it really is implied as just one form of risk treatment in this standard.
Okay, now before we move on to our first reader question, can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in the development of ISO 22301 as part of the technical advisory group to ISO Technical Committee 223 and as a member of Working Group 4 at the June 2011 Berlin meeting?
Sure. Berlin was my first international ISO conference, and I certainly learned a lot about the process and the interactions internationally. Primarily, I sat in as the U.S. representative in Working Group 4, which is charged with developing ISO 22301, and there's two other standards that this work group is developing as well, ISO 22313, which is the guidance document and to business continuity, and ISO 22323, which is the standard specific to organizational resilience. It's a lot like the ACES International SPC1 document that many people are familiar with. But specific to 22301, which at the time of the June conference was issued as a draft international standard for comment, we worked through ultimately 460 comments submitted by subject matter experts around the world. Some of these were technical comments about business continuity life cycle. Some were recommendations regarding wording, and there were a number that were in reaction to the organization of the document itself. But I can say this, after a few days of working through those 460 comments, the document's far better. Although many people are calling ISO 22301 a final draft international standard at this point, that decision has not been made by ISO as far as I know. It has to be voted on by the ISO committee, so it remains at this point in time, we're recording this, a draft international standard. So regardless, we'll be meeting in Beijing in early November to continue work on 22301 and the other two standards, and business continuity professionals should be prepared to once again comment on it again later this year as inputs into the final product.
Okay, let's move on to our first reader question, which says, in what ways is ISO 22301 an improvement over BS 25999 and NFPA 1600? Why is it a better tool to help lead the BC and EM professionals forward? How is this better for businesses and communities?
Well, I think there's some solid improvements over content you might find in BS 25999, and professionals who appreciate or even use NFPA 1600 will see some of their favorite content included as well. But all in all, a couple of the comments I'd make is, number one, it's an improvement because this document has broad international involvement in crafting the content, and because of that, you start seeing less jargon. Like, for instance, many people that are familiar with 25999 recognize or hear the term MTPOD or MTPOD, which stands for Maximum Tolerable Period of Disruption. That acronym, which has largely been unpopular, is absent from this standard. I think there's a lot of clarity regarding the direction of business continuity, that this is involved in both proactive and reactive risk treatments. The purpose and intent of this standard, as they're defining it in the next version, is to plan, establish, implement, operate, monitor, review, maintain, and continually improve a documented management system to protect against, reduce the likelihood of occurrence of, prepare for, and respond to and recover from disruptive incidents when it arises. It's a lot of words, but ultimately that gets back to the fact that the business continuity is all about trying to decrease likelihood and minimize impact. This document has references to a primary objective of health and safety. It makes reference to all resources that the organization needs to deliver its products and services, which includes information technology. But it doesn't go through prescribing how to recover information technology, but that's the intent of a standard like this. Another improvement, it's ISO after all, and ISO standards are accepted widely amongst a diverse group of organizations, and I think that you'll find that ISO has got broader acceptance internationally compared to an acronym like British Standard or BS, or it also is accepted far more internationally than something just resident in the United States like NFPA. So, ultimately, this is, because it's an ISO standard, I think it's going to be able to be, in the way it's written with less jargon, it's going to be understood better by a wide variety of interested parties internationally, and hopefully that will help advance the cause and get away from some of the country-specific standard squabbling that takes place.
Okay, our next reader question asks, how will this affect two of DHS's PS prep picks for voluntary business continuity certification, referring to BS 259992 and ASIS SPC1?
Well, I think at this point it's unknown. The PS prep legislation indicates that DHS and FEMA can change the mix of standards in the PS prep program if there's a standard that is introduced that meets the government's selection criteria, which they published a number of years ago. Already, ASIS and the British Standards Institute jointly created a standard that meets that criteria, ASIS BCM1, and it's not included right now. So ISO 22301 and even a future ISO 22323, the one about organizational resilience that I mentioned, could, and I truly mean could, replace BS 25999 and even ASIS's SPC1 respectively if those organizations choose to withdraw their standards in favor of the ISO work being done. But we're going to really have to wait and see. Regardless, neither of the ISO standards, meaning the business continuity standard or organizational resilience standard, are finalized, and until that's done, DHS and FEMA's work really can't even begin.